Markets opened down about 285 after we learned this morning that nearly 3 million people filed for unemployment last week. That means more than 36 million Americans have lost their jobs in the past 8 weeks, and we know at least 10 million more are eligible for unemployment, but they haven't been able to get through the system. All of that is more than 20% of the labor force. But remember, you cannot compare this to 2008 or anything we have ever experienced before. Jobs didn't disappear naturally because demand disappeared. We forced the economy to shut down in order to save lives. And now, as people across the country are starting to slowly return to work, the big question is, will we be able to bounce back? And what will it look like? Joining us now to discuss, Ben White, Chief Economic Correspondent for Politico, and Seth Harris, former acting U.S. Secretary of Labor under President Obama. Ben, where are we in this economic crisis? Because President Trump says it's all about the economy. Let's get back out there and get to work.
Well, where we are is in a really bad place, obviously. I mean, 36 million people in 2 months is unprecedented and horrific. I would say there's one piece of slightly good news in all this, and that continuing claims are at 22.8 million. So at least some of these people are already going back to work. So that's a good thing. But overall, they're terrible numbers, terrible for the economy. And obviously, we want to reopen this economy, but people don't feel safe. Every poll I look at says, 77% of the American public is not comfortable going back to work without testing, without tracing. You can't reopen an economy that way. You risk all sorts of new spikes and another shutdown of the economy. So we kind of blew the response to this virus, and there's a chance that we're going to blow the reopening process and put us in a deeper hole. That's what worries me right now.
Seth, if we reopen too quickly and then risk having to shut down again because people get even sicker, are we forgetting that of these 36 million people who are on unemployment, they're receiving unemployment benefits every week? It's not like they're getting money, hopefully enough money to provide through this stressed time. So why is it there's a huge rush to get back when the health risk is so big?
Well, I think a sizable portion of it is political stuff. I think that the president is hoping, wrongly, that if he forces states to reopen, that suddenly the economy is going to grow again and his reelection prospects are going to improve. But I agree with Ben. If you compare states like Georgia, that is purportedly open, with a state like New York, which is locked down more than maybe any other state in the country, Georgia had more initial unemployment claims last week and the preceding week than New York State did. And if you compare other measures of economic activity, how many employees are back to work, how many locations are open, how many hours are being worked, Georgia is only doing slightly better than states like Ohio and my state of Maryland. So I don't think that government shutting things down is the only problem that we face. It's that people are legitimately frightened of getting sick and dying from this deadly pandemic.
Here's what I don't get. Fed Chair Jay Powell warned yesterday that we could see permanent damage to our economy, not if businesses don't reopen. He says we could see permanent damage if businesses don't get more support. But today, 24 hours later, the president said something completely different. Take a look.
Next year, I think we're going to be very, very strong again. We have tremendous powers that other people don't have. We have tremendous job capacity, and I think what's going to happen is next year is going to be one of our best years. I feel that we will transition in this third quarter. Fourth quarter is going to be good. Next year is going to be incredible.
Ben, we've already had more than 100,000 small businesses closed for good. What is the president talking about?
I don't know. He's living in a fantasy world here. I mean, we'll have better numbers in the third and fourth quarter only because we'll be coming off a drop of like 40% in the second. But the idea that we're going to have some blockbuster year next year is supported by no evidence, and no serious economist I talk to thinks that's the case. And one of the big problems here is that the government response in terms of support for businesses has been generally pretty good. We've talked about problems with the Paycheck Protection Program, but it's definitely saved some small businesses. We're trying to keep the doors open so when we can reopen, people can go back and, keep their jobs. But some of these benefits, the unemployment benefits in particular, will run out in August. We have other programs that are going to run out of money. And Washington right now is nowhere near close to agreeing on how to extend this. And we just have to do it. There has to be more aid. We can't allow states to go bankrupt and lay off a lot of people. So at some point, you have to put aside all the rhetoric and say, okay, we're not going to have a blockbuster economy. If we want to avoid having an absolutely horrible economy next year, we need to do more at the federal level, not just the Federal Reserve. As Powell said, Congress needs to act, pump more money into this, make sure people can continue to buy food, pay their rent as this goes on, because we're not reopening in a snap like Trump says. It's just a total fantasy.
We got to figure out how we're going to survive, not talk fantasy about how we're going to thrive. Seth, when we first shut down, the argument was pretty clear. We needed to do something to face the health crisis, and that did create an economic crisis. But the longer we stay closed, does it become health versus health? In reality, when GDP drops, we know life expectancy drops, and stay-at-home orders could be harmful to people's mental health, to their physical health. Does the debate change when we start to realize all the other costs associated with staying home this long?
Well, I think you're right that there's a direct connection between economic downturn, unemployment, and poverty, and bad health outcomes, increases in suicide, increases in opioid addiction and death. So, yes, that's absolutely true. But it's a false dichotomy in this case, because opening up when it is not safe to open up is also a recipe for increased death and increased illness in our society and an overburdening of our healthcare system. There is a third choice that we're not spending enough time talking about, and that is not when we open, but how we open. It is possible to reopen the economy safely if we had a comprehensive testing and contact tracing system, if we allowed the CDC to advise businesses and schools and other institutions how to protect the people who come and do business in those institutions, if we made sure that everybody had personal protective equipment, if all of those things were done and we provided the requisite health care and health insurance to the American people and gave them free testing and free coronavirus treatments, well, then it might be possible to open safely. But the way we're doing it now is just nuts. We're sending people out to expose themselves to a dangerous risk and pretending that that's going to be good for the economy. It won't. We know from what's going on in our economy now that that's not going to work. So let's try the way that makes a lot of sense and is science and evidence driven.
Thank you, Lane 3. Regional, responsible, CDC-guided reopening where it works and when. It is about how. It is not lane 1 or 2. Seth, thank you for reminding us the importance of lane 3. Gentlemen, we're going to leave it there. After the